So earlier today, 5 cards got restricted. Bukamon from BT14, the Gabumon X Antibody, Garurumon X Antibody, and Anubismon from EX5, and Mr. Pizza Crust himself, Apoclymon. Now, Apoclymon I don't actually have in the list of cards here because he's probably the one that I have the least to talk about. Like, there are other decks that can potentially mill the opponent out in this game, but if you're playing Megidra or if you're using the Megidramon low end to mill an opponent, the trade-off is you're also going to be drawing cards in due process, so you kind of need to be mindful of what you're doing, right? With Anubis, it's not exactly the same situation because you can kind of just search for the important pieces in your deck and bot deck the rest, assuming you're playing Dark Masters. And if you're not, you're probably using the Gabumon line as a low end to filter things. And once you have your baseline set up there, and you play out your first Apoclymon, even if your opponent can delete it somehow, you're already set up. If they're not putting the cards in your trash back into your deck via Merciful Mode or something, you can just keep going. Just playing another Apoc again and again and again and again and again. Milling them for 6 or 8 or whatever, really. Moving on, Bukamon. Bukamon is a really, really strong card just because it gives jamming for basically no cost. It's really easy to meet the condition, and as such, it's become basically the best egg that you can be running in decks that have a blue base for the most part. This is one reason, if we go back to the previous restriction list, I was a little like thrown off by them hitting Mott Galgamon because this is a hit that, in my mind, didn't really do anything. Part of the reason for this is because the BT11 and BT13 Mott Galmons have the exact same all turns inheritable. I believe this is mandatory because it just says when an effect adds cards to your opponent's hand, unsuspend this Digimon. So your opponent can potentially play around the unsuspend by searching something early while they are already unsuspended. But the actual reason this matters is because if it's your turn, right, you have jamming, you swing with one of these, you can now evo into the Mirage. The Mirage can bounce something. It'll unsuspend thanks to the ESS, and you can continue playing your turn from there. Like, this card is really, really egregious, not just in this deck, but in blue decks in general, so it makes sense that it got hit. But again, that was just why I was really thrown off by the Mott Galmon hit initially, even though I got the idea behind it because it just didn't realistically matter, right? Like that was my big thought. Like this is a hit that doesn't really matter. In addition, there were some lists running Nikolai previously, and those may crop up again as a consequence of this card getting restricted because, hey, don't really want to build around a 1-out, right? Even if you have a 20% chance to see it. So first up, we got the Gabumon and the Garurumon. The Garurumon is what I expected to get hit because it's straight up a draw 2 trash 2. It just is crazy filter on top of the purple Gabumon low end that previously got hit. And the reason the Gabumon X antibody is here, I guess, is to tone down some concerns that people have about purple filtering as a whole, because like if you can find your other pieces, of course, you wouldn't have too much to worry about, and this thing does check top 4 and adds 2. I personally wasn't expecting it though, mainly because they already hit a lot of the other, Gabumon filter cards, but I don't think I can really complain about it because Guru is still very functional with this hit. I actually was playtesting with a few people. I want to say about a month ago, we were just trying out different lists based on potential ban lists we could get in the future. And one of them was running both of these cards at one, and the deck still functioned relatively fine. Maybe they'll bring this back to 4 in the future. But yeah, as things currently stand, I think this is okay. Now, Anubis is the card that I actually want to talk about because this card is in and of itself actually problematic potentially for future card design. So them restricting this to 1 makes a lot of sense, and I want to talk about it from my perspective, I guess. So let's read it first. When digivolving or main once per turn, you may trash up to 3 cards in your hand. Then play 1 purple Digimon card from your trash for the cost. When it would be played by this effect, reduce the play cost by 3. For each card trashed by this effect, further reduce it by 1. So you can play pretty much any purple Digimon card in your trash with this effect, right? There's no restriction on maximum cost, there's no restriction on level, there's no restriction on DP. Then it says, when your Digimon is played by an effect, delete one of your opponent's level 5 or lower Digimon. If no Digimon was deleted by this effect, draw 1, so you get some extra advantage and board maintenance, right? Board control. So the crazy thing about Anubis that a lot of people use it for is if you play Mervamon and you Digicross her, her cost goes from 11 to 8, right? If you discarded 3 cards, or trash 3 cards rather, with Anubis, then that 8 gets reduced to 2. If the card you Digicrossed her with was Ignitemon, on play, she'll play 2 more bodies and you'll gain a memory, right? So effectively, you'll be making Merva and 2 extra bodies for 1. All 3 of those bodies have Rush, and more than likely your Anubismon also can swing, right? So you can potentially go for game from that kind of a situation. The idea that people had behind hitting Ignite was partially fueled by the fact that prior to now, Bandai just hadn't hit higher rarity cards. But hey, they did it this time. I also saw some people say that hitting Merva was the correct thing to do, and part of the reason why I have all these purple cards here is to explain why that's not really true. Even if they hit Ignitemon to 0, the thing is, you could still Digicross Merva with another copy of herself. Sure, you wouldn't gain the extra memory, but consider this. Labramon here says, when you play a Digimon by an effect, gain 1 memory. Dobermon X, when you play a Digimon by an effect, gain 1 memory. Goblimon, when one of your effects trashes a card in your hand, gain 1 memory. And Blue Marimon, when you play a Digimon by an effect, gain 1 memory. By paying the cost for Anubis and having, a combination of these cards, you can still gain 3 memory total, or even at least just 2 and have a break even. So as long as you can cover Anubismon's cost somehow, you can keep turn. And that's crazy. Another thing you can do is go for Grand Kawagamon here from BT16. It costs 7. It's not currently released, but just think about the potential for this. You reduce its cost by 6. You play it for 1. If any of your inheritables are there, you can, gain some memory. So let's say you play this for free. Then the on play activates. You suspend 2 of your opponent's Digimon or Tamers, and the cards that are suspended by this effect can't unsuspend during your opponent's next unsuspend phase. Then you get to delete one of your opponent's suspended Tamers. When it becomes suspended, one of your Digimon gains security attack +1 for the turn, which can be pretty useful. But you know what else you can do? You can evolve it into Shine Greymon Ruin mode, and depending on your initial board state, you could do that while maintaining turn. You don't need to, though. And Shine has the ability that when Digivolving, until the end of your opponent's turn, all your opponent's Digimon get -5 KDP. So just because of a level 6 ace existing, you already had this line opened up. But on top of that, the ace actually does something that's kind of good. If you wanted to go into a level 6 instead, playing Myotismon for free gets you a Tamer card out of your trash onto the field, or it even gets you a level 3, which can help, accelerate your gameplay. I don't know why I said gameplay, I meant game plan. Right, it can give you another body to build on. It can give you a rush target. And then, oh hey, guess what? We have Leviamon, who is also an EX5. On play, if your opponent has equal or more Digimon Tamers than you, delete one of your opponent's Digimon with the highest level. Then delete one of your opponent's Digimon with the lowest level. Crazy removal. Does it end your turn? Does it cost 7 memory in that particular situation? Yes, but if you gain 3 from this thing being played and cards being trashed, just some conjunction of that, then this effectively is being played for -9. You're just spending 4 memory on this, and that's kind of insane, especially given the fact that it has this all turns effect. When an opponent's Digimon is deleted, gain 1 memory for each Digimon deleted. So if this thing actually pops 2, you end up paying 2 to put this on the board. Insane. Anubis is just a walking hazard. This card being restricted to 1, I think, is perfectly fine, and I'm not complaining about that. It's just if it exists at 4, it doesn't matter if they hit Ignitemon. It doesn't matter if they ban Merva. You'd be hitting a bunch of cards for the sake of not hitting the actual problem. And this is one thing I've been arguing for a while now because I've seen a lot of people suggest that Ignitemon would be hit, but all hitting Ignitemon does is kind of screw over people who actually want to play the Merva cross deck or who want to use, Mervamon and some of the other decks, or maybe are using Ignitemon and some other cross decks or other purple decks, while not actually addressing the issue that Anubismon itself presents for future card design. And this is something that they also talk a bit about both on the producer's letter, I think, and the restriction list updates. I'm not on the development team and I doubt I'll ever be, but I try to take a reasoning approach like this for like what makes sense. And in the case of purple decks filtering super duper fast, these hits do make sense because they are the primary component of that happening. In the case of Anubis, when you take Mervamon out of the equation and you look at future card design, it becomes very obvious very quickly that on play effects in general become very dangerous to print in purple because this card can just abuse it and can have a deck built around abusing it. Now, you can still build a deck with the intent to find Anubismon and do some crazy combo stuff. You can do some loop deck stuff maybe, but it'll take you a bit longer to get there, and you'll also still need tools to defend yourself getting to that point. So this card being put to 1, I think, is okay. Like, this is a card that you'll probably run in a hardcore Leviamon list because it's just another way to get the Leviamon on the board. You may even opt to run this in something like Belphamon, or like I play Megidra. This card is looking pretty clean for that. Will I do it? Who can say? But the card's pretty darn nice. Yeah, just overall, it's a bit ridiculous to me that people ever thought that Mervamon was the actual issue. Merv is fine. And in regards to the Merva Cross deck that runs like Gravity Crush and Blinding Ray, in that instance, I think hitting Gravity Crush and Blinding Ray probably makes more sense, especially going forward with a lot of the security trashing effects that they're coming out with. But yeah, that's basically all I wanted to say. Like, these hits, I think, were justified, and there are going to be a number of you who are upset with this, who feel less inclined to pick up the product, and so on and so forth. And I do understand your frustration, and you should not be ridiculed for that. I do want to suggest that you take into consideration, however, that there are a number of other things in each of these sets that are still worth picking up. Now, that's not me saying, if you were looking forward to Garurumon specifically, that you should switch your focus or something like that. But if you were planning on buying into the product anyway to play other themes, well, just maybe focus some of your attention on those themes for the moment.